Hi, this is János, this is Real World Audio, and today I'm going to talk about amplifier modifications. And as you see here, this is my YouTube studio, and you see here there was this video that I made. Is the DYNACO Mark III monoblock worth the consideration? And I received lots of wonderful comments for this video, so I'm going to jump into this video. And Jack Stanley's answer is really fantastic, and this is what Jack shared with us. Hi János, thank you for your excellent video and great insight. I have restored or modified half a dozen of each of the Stereo 70, MK3 and MK4s, DYNACOs, and would like to share some of my findings as follows. The primary impedance of the output transformers in all three amps is 4.3 kilo ohms, and they are excellent performers. All amps are capable of superb sound. However, the driver circuits using 7199 or 6A and 8, the 7199 is the Stereo 70, and the other is the Mark III and the Mark IVs, severely limit both the overall dynamics and bass definition of these amps. I have used a driver board utilizing a cascoded 12AU7 into a 12BH7 phase splitter in my Mark IIIs with superb results, which challenge the best sounding amps out there. Yes sir, the KT88 has an authority that can be addictive, but the balanced sound and mid-range of the ER34 can be so right. My favorite sounding ER34 amp, a DIY, uses the Mark III output transformers with Triode connected and self-biased ER34s, zero global negative feedback, driven by half of the 12AU7 at 4 milliamps of current into a 12BH7 phase inverter. So nice, about 16 watts per channel, and drives my 86 dB speakers. Wow. The self-biasing of the ER34 versus fixed biased I found reveals just a little more realism, such as the sound of the skins of the drums versus just the whack. Thank you Jack, this is absolutely fantastic sharing, and I think this is what my channel viewers are looking for when they are looking for my videos and asking for advice. And this is such a wonderful summary, and for my other viewers I can confirm that what I have experienced are exactly the same as Jack has described. So what I'm talking about, let's start with the very last sentence. Self-biased versus fixed biased ER34s, and it's not just ER34s but other tubes as well, is that when the tubes are self-biased, they have more realism to them, so instrument sounds feel more natural and real. I found that okay, let's just look at Jack's description, that the sound of the skins on the drums are better, they come through better when it's self-biased, and when it's fixed bias, then you hear the whack, and the whack dominates. The whack is more emphasized than the skin, and if you are into enjoying the whack, then you will prefer fixed bias. If you enjoy the intricacies of a drum, so not just like that initial pulse, initial energy, but the tone, the texture, the details, the three-dimensionality of the instrument, then the self-bias, the cathode bias will get that part more. And that's what I've been doing, that I've when I get like commercial amplifiers and modify commercial amplifiers, one of my first modes is almost always changing fixed bias to self bias, also called as cathode bias, and just for the reason that it takes the sound to a more natural sound. When we have a fixed bias, that I think it artificially inflates the power, so it makes you give the impression that you have more power at your reserve, at the cost of the nuances, the details, the harmonic structure. So it's kind of like almost like if you are into sports and you are working on your body, and then you suddenly start taking a lot of steroids, and then you are bulking up and you have disproportionate muscle gains, but because you got to those bigger muscles without the rigorous training, you do not develop the neuronal control, the control over those muscles, and you will have visually big muscles. You will be able to maybe deadlift more, but if you want to put those muscles to actual work, they won't help you, because you have a few muscles like your bicep, which is just massively disproportionately bigger than your lats or your deltoids or any other muscles, and because your body doesn't form a functional unit anymore, you won't be able to put those biceps to actual real life work, such as like if you work on a construction site, or if you are, let's say, doing some sports, or like practicing martial arts, or doing athletics, things like that. So that's how I feel about fixed bias. It's like taking steroids as an athlete and just artificially inflating one or two muscles at the cost of the balance for your entire body. So it becomes I feel that it breaks the balance of the sound. When we look at how the tubes operate, when you have a self bias, then it also means that the tube is controlling itself, and such conditions when the tube is pushed to extremes, they are avoided when you are using self-biasing. So it means that the tube has self-restraint. When we are using fixed biasing, there's no self-restraint on the tube, and I feel that the operating parameters, operating points of the vacuum tube just fluctuate in such a wide range that that when the tube has very little output power versus when the tube has a very high output power, the operating characteristics of the tube change so much that the human ears perceive it as a problematic distortion, as a breaking of the balance in the tonality. And when we have self-biasing with the tube, that self-biasing ensures that the tube, when it operates with very little power output versus high power output, it still retains much closer characteristics, much closer tonality with small and large signals. And I think that's why, for example, the skin of the drum can come through, because even though there's that big dynamic push of the drum beat, but the skin sound is actually the overtones, the higher frequency harmonics, which are still coming through despite that really high energy initial fundamental. and when we have fixed bias, then that initial very high energy of the fundamental frequency is wreaking havoc with the overtones, and that's why the skin is not audible as much with the drums. Or if you are listening to a violin, it instead of hearing the full-bodied instrument, you are here with the cathode bias, with fixed bias, you are hearing a screeching skinned cat. Yeah, so I think that's about it. And also, very important is that these amplifiers, the Stereo 70, the Mark III, Mark IV, all of them were built in an era when the line voltage was 115 volts. Now we have nominal 120 here in the United States, and these amplifiers were also built in the United States when we had 115 volts line source. Now it's essentially you need to design for 125 volts, because that's what I observe, and usually people observe between 120 and 125 volts as the voltage coming out from the outlets. There are of course some areas where it can drop lower, sometimes it can drop significantly lower. Actually, my mentor Stu Ono, in his shop, which was in Honolulu, those of you who remember the Algaroba Street, there the voltage often dropped below 100 volts. We routinely measured 95 to 98 volts. So he had to put in a ginormous autoformer to step up the voltage to 120 volts. So depending on where you live, if the electrical network is massively overloaded, it can drop even to the below 100 volts. But normally, for most parts, hopefully in the United States, most residential areas, your wall output will be around 120 to 125 volts. So it means that the Stereo 70 and Mark III, Mark IV leak and anything and everything that was designed before year 2000, before 1980, that was like 60s, 70s for the 115 volts, they are going to see much higher voltages than should be healthy for the tubes and for the transformers. So one way to kind of help all of these amplifiers is to change the fixed bias to self-bias, because that self-biasing will eat up a couple dozen voltages, couple dozen volts from the voltage, and which is kind of similar to the amount of volts that are now in excess compared to the original operating parameters of the tube. So basically, when we are using cathode bias for these amplifiers that were designed in the 50s, 60s, 70s, we are operating the tubes in circumstances and conditions they were originally designed for. So that's like a second added bonus and benefit. And if you don't do that, you keep the fixed bias and you don't drop the current at which they are running, then these amps will keep on burning up the tubes, because their tubes will age much faster, because they are being pushed way beyond their plate dissipation that they were originally designed for. So I think that's one critical point everyone should know about. And then Jack shared about his favorite ER34 amp that he DIY'd from a Mark III DYNACO that normally uses the KT88/6550 tubes, and he changed them for ER34 and he triode connected them, self-biased, and no global negative feedback. That's another thing that I myself do, is that if I take out the global negative feedback, it just increases the naturalness of the sound of the amplifier by really big margin. And if you triode connect the tube, then the output impedance of the tube becomes much lower than in ultralinear or pentode mode, and for a nice good amplifier friendly loudspeaker, you will not need negative feedback, global negative feedback. I would say in that case, global negative feedback will harm you more than benefit you. I would say this global negative feedback for these amplifiers is beneficial when you are using really tiny compact bookshelf speakers, but even then I made several of my amplifiers like adjustable between like how much global feedback you apply, from 0 to quite a lot, and sometimes even with the compact bookshelf speakers, I don't hear any benefit whatsoever for applying global feedback. Bass control doesn't get any better. Of course, if you have loudspeakers which have like tremendous impedance dips in them and they are really problematic to drive, yes, you might want to keep with the global feedback, but other than that, taking it out can and will result in a really significant improvement for the naturalness of the sound, like how natural, how it's kind of like going from a PA system to an unplugged concert. That's kind of like where no global feedback is taking your sound to. And what he did is he changed the drivers to a 12AU7 and 12BA7 phase inverter, phase splitter. So, and I think that is something really excellent that I noticed myself. 12AU7 and 12BH7, it's a fantastic pair and results in a very natural sound, and it's absolutely fantastic to drive EL34 with this combination of driver and phase splitter. And actually Mike Sanders at Quicksilver, he uses this combination quite frequently, and I think even if you use different tubes, even with the KT88, this is a really fantastic combination to drive KT88 as well. And when driven by this combo, even a KT88 has a lot better mid-range than driven by other tube combinations. So I think it is really beautiful. Also, if you are thinking about the 807 tube or KT66, this is an astonishingly super driver combo to drive an 807 or KT66. And yes, and it gives about 16 watts per channel when you operate a pair of ER34 push-pulls in triode connected mode, and drives 86 dB speaker as well. Yeah, I would say even 86 dB, it will be really nicely driven by such an amplifier. What else? He also mentioned here that about the original driver tubes, the 7199 and 6A and 8, they severely limit both overall dynamics and bass definition of these amps. Yes. And when you change it to the 12AU7 and BH7, these are a lot more capable, a lot more powerful tubes, and they will significantly improve the dynamics and bass response. You will feel as if your power reserves have gone up tremendously and the benefit for power handling, power output, by changing your driver tube will be a lot more significant than keeping the same driver tubes and changing your output tubes from ER34 to KT88 or KT120 or even bigger tubes, or paralleling your power tubes. So if you have an amp like a Stereo 70 or Mark III, Mark IV, and you want more power, your answer is not the power tube, your answer is beefing up the driver section. And now I also will share to you that sometimes you might not want to do that to increase dynamics and bass response, and when you don't want to do that is if you are watching a lot of TV shows and films with your audio system. And yes, I know this is totally from the left field, but for example, I myself, I watch a lot of films with my audio. So I don't use like the TV speakers. I have my projector hooked up to my stereo system, my big system, and I listening from there. And one of my current complaints, or the biggest complaint about it, is that today's like the majority of TV shows have these asinine effects. Everything is boom, it has to explode and it has to fly, and yeah, and the first time you hear it in your life, it's wow, it's amazing, it's fantastic, it's exhilarating. But everything, even like kids TV shows, like sound like the Titanic exploding in your eardrum, like kind of like your head hitting an iceberg like 15 times every minute, is just freaking insane, and just makes me just want to just turn off the sound and just watch silent films. And when you have this limitation to the dynamics and bass definition, it actually renders these unwatchable garbage that we have as TV shows to a very nice, very pleasant experience that finally you and your pets are not getting a freaking heart attack, or someone like closes the door on the TV, on the show. So I think this is really helpful, hopefully. And one thing that Jack has shared with us, and that's important, is that the primary impedance of all these output transformers is the same. And if you want to beef up your Stereo 70 significantly, then this is the response to basically get Mark III, DYNACO Mark III, because it has kind of the same output transformer but a much higher wattage. So it means that it takes a lot more power before going into saturation. So it means that if you are running with your Stereo 70 into an issue that you need more power, first of all, change it change the driver to 12AU7 and phase splitter 12BH7. That will remove the limitation in the driver circuit. And also change the tube to fixed bias, which will make the sound a lot more natural. And when you have these really high dynamic peaks, it will still keep its character. It won't fall apart, won't become a raging maniac like fixed bias tubes do when pushed hard. It retains composure even under pressure. And then add the bigger transformer of the Mark III to remove the transformer saturation, and that's just an absolute, as they say, game changer when there's no or diminished output transformer saturation. And that's what will make the sound. So a lot of people who have solid state amplifiers, they for them this will be the move that makes your tube amplifier sound to them like a transistor amplifier. is that removing the that compression, that magnetic compression that the output transformer adds to the high energy outputs. And also, if you have fatigue in your system, having a bigger output transformer just decreases the amount of fatigue tremendously. Plus, you also have the benefit here that with the Mark III you have a much bigger power transformer, and it is per channel because it's a monoblock, so it just basically removes a lot of limitations from having a lot of natural power. And also, because the primary impedance is the same, you can freely change the KT88 to an ER34, and as I said, also just change it, and you can pretty much keep it close to a Mark III if you want. If you want to change just that part on a Mark III, to change from the power tubes, it can be done. There's a lot of amplifiers, like some quicksilvers where you can change, like interchangeable ER34, KT88, and you can change them, and whichever, just operate whatever you want. And not in any amplifier, just some amplifier that are designed like that. And of course, just make sure that they are biased properly. And that's a lot longer project and thing to talk about, which I would be for another day. I think right now I kind of went around this comment, and thank you, Jack. I most appreciate this wonderful comment. And I can second everything you shared, and I hope the two of us together have provided now a lot of inspiration for modifications of and usage of these amplifiers. Thank you. Have an awesome day. Bye bye.